You're watching Dukascopy TV. I'm Elaine Stenson. The UK housing market boom continues as prices have risen at the fastest rate since April 2010, going up by as much as 10% this month. Steve Ruffley from Intertrader in Jersey joins me on the line now. It's been predicted that UK house prices will rise by nearly 6% over the next 5 years as demand continues to outstrip supply. However, market analysts are forecasting a 7% rise over 2014, while some analysts have predicted that nationwide data could show a rise of up to 10% year on year. Steve, are we looking at a UK housing bubble or not?
Well, I think it's very difficult to argue that it's not a housing bubble. Obviously, inflation is increasing, wages are not keeping up with inflation, so how can wages naturally keep up with a 10% rise? So I think it's very, very difficult to see how this is not all going to implode at some point. The average price now in London of a house is £600,000, nowhere near the average wage. The gap between the rich and the poor that we've seen is ever increasing. I think the latest stats are 5 families in London have more money than 12.6 million families. So history's told us when we get to these great divides that something has to give. So I think definitely a housing bubble is the only way we can describe the current situation we're seeing.
Also, George Osborne reiterated concerns over the housing market to the Bank of England and also said that the foreign property tax is still to come into force in the future. Last autumn, he said that foreign property investors would have to pay capital gains tax in a bid to prevent a housing bubble from forming. Steve, what kind of impact do you think that this could have?
Well, realistically, I think it'll have very little impact. The majority of people and foreign investment money that's come in will already have made its profit and gone. A lot of Russian money in. That's what we've seen with the problem with Russia and the Crimea at the minute. London and obviously the government's policies to kind of take a step back. They know how important foreign investment is to London and the growth of the UK. So I would say that it's a bit disproportionate. You see a lot of foreign money is high-end. So you're seeing Saudi princes and royalty buy houses for millions and millions of pounds and don't live in them. This is pushing the average price, across London and of house prices up. But it's not real. It's not real unless you have to live in these properties or it actually means anything to you. So it's just, I think it's another way of potentially curbing supply and demand and just skewing things in favour of the UK. But realistically, all the kind of high-end money is still, it's not going to go anywhere. Capital has a way of finding the best use. So if it's not London, with the kind of favourable tax conditions, then the money will go somewhere else. But I would say the majority of foreign money and foreign investment has already made what it wants to. So if that pulls out of London, it will have an effect on the top end. But again, it's not even going to affect ordinary people because they're £1 million houses, these £10 million flats. They just drag the averages up. They're not in the reach of normal people. So the money will just go and it'll be filled by something else.
And how will either of these outcomes, housing bubble or no housing bubble, affect the UK's economy, which is set to grow faster than any other G7 nation?
Well, the thing with the UK and England especially is we've been through the tough times and we've come back. When you see places like Spain, Portugal that have these massive injections of European money and massive growth due to infrastructure changes, that can only be done once. So once the money's been spent, you then have to find other things. Now, the UK has been very good at adapting, going to the service industry and just filling the voids with something else. So I think our growth was always on the cards and unemployment was always going to drop and people were going to have to change their expectations. I think that's really what's happened. The people are just taking jobs they wouldn't do. They're doing part-time jobs, doing contract roles, and people have just adapted to the changing market conditions. So the growth for England and the UK compared to the rest of the G7 nations is really a different kettle of fish. We've still got a lot of stored wealth in our property. Again, even places like Germany, historically, people rent, so they don't have that money that's followed through. But then they don't have the associated debt. So the UK, for me, is a little bit different in that historically, when we've had bad times, we've always bounced back stronger. Whereas European countries, especially places like Spain and Portugal, are relatively new. They haven't had them down times and that experience to be able to bounce back. They've only ever seen rapid growth, so they don't know how to deal with it. So I think that the growth in the UK is going to be sustained, and I think the reason why the growth is sustained is people have actually changed their working habits and their expectations, and that's what the rest of Europe needs to do in order to have the same kind of growth.
And finally, Steve, do you think that the strength of the housing market is starting to spread from London and the southeast to the rest of the country?
Well, that's an interesting point. I mean, again, the whole powerhouse of the UK is in London. We can't deny that. But if property prices in London go up and people become more affluent, then when they come to retire or take a different tact in life, they're going to spread out into the wider area. So more people, more money is obviously going to push the house prices up. Will the rest of the north of England ever catch up with London? I don't see how it can. There just aren't the same opportunities. There isn't the same level of income. So I think prices are generally got to be naturally biased to how close they are to the centre. But as we've seen, London is really kind of trying to beef up its infrastructure, so they know they're going to have to accommodate more people, and with more people becomes more stress. So it goes back to that question of, are we going to have a housing bubble? Housing bubble, people with money, people that are already on the property ladder don't have to worry. It's the people coming through. But I think that the point I made about inflation being, so high at the minute, and the wages not keeping up with inflation, they'll get to a point where it doesn't matter if you've got a 20-30% deposit, you just won't be able to afford the mortgage repayments when interest rates finally go up, because they will. And in the UK probably as early as 2015. So there'll be a natural point where people just physically can't pay the mortgage repayments, so it doesn't matter. You'll never be able to own if you can't pay the mortgage payments. So I think something has to correct itself, and it will happen probably mid to late 2015 when interest rates finally creep up. That'll be the true tale of how strong the UK's economy is.
Okay, Steve, thank you for that, and thank you for joining me on the line today as always. And that's all from me for now, but do check back for more from the team throughout the week. Bye for now.